This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our Small Business Application Workshop for the Greene County American Rescue Plan Act funding. We'll probably wait about 30 seconds as different individuals are still logging on. We want to make sure everybody can hear us from the beginning so we can minimize the need to repeat. So if you'll just bear with us about 25, 30 seconds, we'll get underway. Thank you. And hopefully you heard that recording. We will be recording this to put this on the website so that other small businesses can go to this, and you can go to it yourself and hear what we accomplished today. Thank you. Good afternoon again. We'll get underway with our workshop. Thank you for your participation. I would like to acknowledge the leadership and diligence of our Greene County Commission and our office holders. We can probably go into our slide presentation. Thank you. Greene County is devoting just over $8 million to the Small Business Assistance Program. The philosophy that the Greene County Commission has adopted is to attempt to provide assistance to as many small businesses as possible. This is the primary reason why we have identified in the eligibility guidelines businesses with 50 employees or less and a maximum amount of assistance to any single business of $35,000 if you have the maximum amount of employees. We're going to go at this time to our PowerPoint presentation, and we'll start with introductions of the Greene County ARPA team. So to my right.
This is Justin Hill, the Greene County Treasurer.
This is Skylar Crawford, American Rescue Plan intern here at Greene County.
And I'm Lyle Foster. I'm a consultant for the ARPA process with Greene County. We also will show you the other members of the team, I believe, on the next slide. Let's go to that slide and we'll come back to that one. Okay, no worries. This is the other members of our Greene County ARPA team. Chris Coulter, our county administrator. Jeff Scott, the Greene County budget officer. Cindy Stein, Justin Hill, who's here. Dave Kavanagh, Robert Jell, Jenny Haywood, Skylar Crawford, who's the intern that's here today, and Mark Meats, who's another Greene County ARPA intern. I really want to acknowledge their support and their hard work in terms of making all of these Greene County ARPA programs available to our community. There's a lot of work involved, and everybody has been working very diligently to make sure we can launch these programs to benefit the various sectors of our community. We also have a Greene County Advisory Council. This is something that some of you may recall we did with our CARES funding. We've instituted a smaller advisory council, but these are members of our community who are really very key players in our community. They have eyes and ears, understand how our community is recovering in terms of the pandemic, and also will make recommendations in terms of funding levels for the Small Business Assistance Program and in terms of the Nonprofit Assistance Program. I'd like to take you to an overview slide of our ARPA funding. So we'll go back a couple of slides to that. So of course you're aware that Congress passed the 1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan Act. This was the subsequent act to the original CARES Funding Act. Greene County, as you well know through the media and other forms of information, we're the recipient of almost 57 million through ARPA's state and local fiscal recovery fund. We received half of that support almost a year ago. We'll get the second half in 2022. We've got a slide that will show you how our Greene County commissioners have essentially approved us utilizing these funds in the community. 10% are being held in reserve. We did that with the CARES funding. And the reserve is intended if we see some unanticipated needs or community concerns that we need to allocate funding towards, then the commission can do that as we get later into the program. We have until December 31st, 2024 to actually allocate these funds. So we have additional time still to utilize these funds. 20% is for county-wide funding, and that is participating with our local municipalities partnering with our police and fire departments and other individuals and organizations in our community that can benefit from the ARPA funds. 40% is for a collaboration project. Some of you may be aware of our community investment program, which we've just launched. That was an application process intended to fund transformative projects. We had an overwhelming response, 51 applicants requesting over $180 million. We're now in the process of looking how we're going to fund, make recommendations in terms of that initiative. And then the one that's relevant for us today is actually our community bucket. So 40% of that total award is being allocated to the community. And I think that's a very strong testament to the perspective and commitment of our commissioners, making sure that these funds go to our community that needs it most. 40% of those funds are going towards small businesses. The balance, 60%, will go towards nonprofits. Our small businesses, therefore, have just over $80 million that ultimately will go out to our small businesses. This will be done in several phases. This is the first phase application process that we launched last Wednesday, and we anticipate this application process to be open until May 31st. Shortly thereafter, we'll be starting the nonprofit phase, but today, of course, our attention is on the small business application. So it's our intent today to actually walk you through the small business application to make sure you understand how that works line by line. First, we want to go over some of the application links that are found on the Greene County, Missouri website. So we'll just kind of show you what those links look like and how to find us on the Greene County website. One of the links actually shows the eligibility guidelines. We also have a link that's a user guide, which actually takes applicants step by step through the application process. Scarlett, if you can show us those links.
Yeah, sure. So like Dr. Foster mentioned, first we have here is a small business application link. This actually goes to the Greene County's main page. That's where we'll go here in a second, and I'll show you how to exactly arrive at our application portal. The second link you see is a direct link to the portal, and then the third link you see is a direct link to the user guide. And we'll come across those documents as we move on here. All right, so now we've arrived at Greene County's main webpage. And here you'll see American Rescue Plan Act right on the front page. This is the tab you will go to. All right. Then at the bottom of this drop-down, you can see small business application, small business application information, and small business application instruction guide. And that was the user guide I referenced a moment ago. So to access the application portal, we're going to click on small business application. Now we're here at the application portal. Real quick, we wanted to make sure our application is accessible so to the many different types of communities we have here in Greene County. So we wanted to include down here at the bottom left a Google Translate option. So that's just an FYI. Our application is translatable. Now to get started and register, you can see at the top left of the screen, it'll say register. An important distinction to make here, not to confuse you, is there's a sign in option here. That is not how you register. You have to actually click register to go to the registry portion here. And once you do register, you can use the sign in option here in case your application was in progress and maybe you had to leave. And so just in case you want to come back and continue your progress, that is where you sign in. But we're going to be registering. All right, this is the registry page. Some basic information here that you will fill out. First name, last name. You will provide an email. And that email section is important, just because if by some means you forget your password, it'll be important that you have your email registered so you can receive a password reset notification. So that is important, that you provide a legitimate email address there. All right, and we are registered and we have access to the application.
So I will just mention, we know that some of you received assistance in the CARES stimulus funding. We have made some changes to the application since then, and we have tried to develop the application so you will know when you complete it whether or not you qualify and the level of assistance that you will get. We would like to use our workshop time today to provide assistance in how to complete the application and answer any questions that you may have. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us virtually. Please know that we do value your work and all that you do and that you have done to keep your businesses open during the past few years and serving your customers. We know it's been challenging for all of us. So we're going to look first at just your checks, and these, of course, are also on the Greene County page under business information.
Worried about it, and all they're doing is walking right through that application that I've already been in.
We'll do some muting.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not.
Don't worry, let's get some muting done. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Skylar. So make sure, of course, that your business, and these are things you should do before you actually go to the application. Make sure that you do qualify in terms of all of the conditions. And these things are not things that Greene County came up with. These are things that are part of the legislation in the ARPA guidelines that we must be in compliance with as a direct recipient of funds. And so we just want to emphasize that. So all of these things you should be able to check. And obviously we'll come back to any of these things as we go through our time this afternoon. And you'll notice that in each section you will hit save and continue. And at this point, I'm going to turn the next part of our workshop over to Justin Hill, who is the Greene County Treasurer. He has done a phenomenal job with our application process, has taken the lead on developing it, and he is responsible for this calculator section. So if you don't like the calculator section for some reason, please contact Mr. Hill. But seriously, this has been an amazing improvement to what we had on the CARES application. And now Mr. Hill is going to walk you through the calculator portion.
Thank you, Dr. Foster, and I'd just like to recognize your service to the citizens of Greene County. I can't think of anyone better looking out for the needs of the citizens and with more integrity and harder working than you, Dr. Foster. So I appreciate all that you've done for us in these terms, and Skylar's been great to get to work with you as well. So the reason that we've got this calculator here in the beginning, the concept is try and give you as the business owner an idea of the amount of funding that you may qualify for at the beginning. That way, if you find out through making the calculations that you do not qualify for the grant, that saves you the hassle of filling out the whole thing before you realize that you don't qualify. So that's where we try to put all these qualification things at the beginning, and then later on in the application, you'll be putting your name and contact information about your business. So the very first thing, ask the question, does your business own or rent retail, office, warehouse space, or operating space? If not, if you're a sole proprietor, if you work from home, if you just drive around in your pickup truck to conduct business, then the answer to this would be no. However, if it is yes, Skylar, why don't you go ahead and click yes. Then we want a little bit of information to get an idea of what those costs are. So this does not have to be extensive, but if you rent retail space, So you could let us know, $3,600 a month, utilities run about $1,000 a month, something like that, just to give us an idea of what those costs are to you, and what kind of rental space we're talking about. That will help us in our functions. So then once you're done with that, we go to employee count. If you don't have any employees, just put 0 in here. If you have full-time employees, you put the number of full-time employees here. Remember, 50 employees is the maximum. Larger businesses do not qualify for this specific grant. So the total employee count should be under 50, but you would put full-time employees in this first section. And be sure to only include employees that work in Greene County. If you have multiple locations, that's fine. But if they're outside Greene County, you cannot include them in this employee count. All right. And then we have part-time employees. Do the same thing. Put part-time employees in this box here. If you do all of your providing work to others through contract labor, if you are their sole or most significant source of income, you may include contract labor as part-time employees, but only if you are their most significant source of income. So then once you have inputted your employee count, you come down here and you get to see a general structure of what our program is going to be able to pay. So you can see those calculations there, and this particular phony business that Skylar has just inputted this information for, it shows you the maximum eligible allotment would be $16,000. That doesn't mean that that's the grant you're going to get. That just means that would be the maximum that you would qualify for. And so if you'll scroll down there, Skylar, we'll get to the next section of the calculator part 2. So this is the point where we really want you to take some time and provide some information for us. A reasonable estimate of increased expenditures due to COVID-19. You don't have to go back through all of your receipts for everything that you've done since the beginning of the pandemic, but major expenses for sneeze guards or air sanitizers or all those masks that you provided to your employees or customers. If you have a general idea of what those are, maybe you know what those costs were for a couple of months and you can multiply it times the rest of the months that you were providing those things. A reasonable estimate here of what it cost you just to accommodate your customers during the pandemic and to keep them safe is the number that we want here. So Skylar, go ahead and maybe put $10,000 in there for the purpose of the demonstration. All right, so and then next we want a reasonable estimate of your loss of gross profit due to COVID-19. This is probably where you'll spend the most time trying to come up with this. Again, it's not a scientific and we don't need an exact figure here, but we do want it to be based on some very reasonable, very realistic estimates of the revenue that you have lost, but not just the revenue. This is gross profit loss. So that is your revenue minus the direct expenses and the costs of producing that revenue. So for example, if you feel that you've lost $100,000 in revenue, but your margin is 30%. So in other words, it costs you $70,000 in order to make that $100,000. Then what you've lost in gross profit is $30,000. So that's what you've lost in the gross profit, and that's what we want to see here. If you again, there's no way to know for sure how the pandemic has affected your business, but hopefully by looking at previous periods in 2019 and comparing them to the pandemic years of 2020, 2021, that will give you so hopefully some reasonable ways to make those estimations. So after Skylar has done this, we get to an estimated impact to date of 40,000. Again, this is not how much money we can afford to give you. We wouldn't be able to do that for every business to recoup all their losses. But this helps give us an idea of how the pandemic has affected your business. And then just briefly describe the basis of the calculations of this estimate. So if you compared 2019 profits to 2020, 2021, or if you did month to month, or how you came up with those and the effort that you put into coming up with those figures, give us just a sentence or two to tell us what your reason was behind that. Then you're going to list your sources of COVID-related economic relief. So for example, if you got PPP loans and those were forgiven, again, this doesn't count any loans that you got that you have to repay. But if you got your PPP loans forgiven, that figure would go here. And all of these fields here are required. So you'll have to put I believe you may have to put a 0 there if the answer is 0, or put in the dollar amounts that you received. In the SBA section, you might have multiple items that could go here. I know there was an EIDL program, there was disaster relief, restaurant revitalization, shuttered venue grants, all of those things, anything that came from the Small Business Administration by way of grants that you did not have to pay back, that would go there. And then of course we gave out our grants, the CARES from the county and the CARES from perhaps the city of Springfield would go in these sections. Unemployment received by the business owner. If you're a sole proprietor and when your business got shut down, you filed for unemployment and you were able to receive that, that counts as compensation or economic relief from the pandemic on your business. So we would ask that you include that amount here, and any other COVID stimulus or insurance proceeds or anything that you received compensation for the pandemic. You do not have to report your personal, if you got a personal stimulus check like many non-business owners did, then you do not have to report that here. All right. Yeah, go ahead and put in, give us $10,000 or something like that in this section here, Skylar. Sorry, I'm not being specific as we go here, and then just zero the rest of those out. All right, and that will calculate for you at the bottom your total economic relief to date. All right, so that brings us to a total net estimated impact, which takes your estimated losses and subtracts out the relief that you've already received to date, and it comes up with a net estimated impact on your business. Again, this is good information for us to have. It's good information for you to have. But obviously we can't afford to compensate everyone for all of their losses. That brings us to the maximum possible grant. This is the lesser of what you qualify for based on your employee count and those other factors, or your total losses. Whichever one of those is less, that will be your maximum possible grant. Again, not necessarily what you'll get, but the maximum possible that you'll qualify for. Now, section 3, if your losses exceed your maximum possible allotment, then you don't even have to go into section 3. Section 3 is there for those who all right, so that don't have those losses, but desire to do other projects and things that will help mitigate it. So some type of testing program, sneeze guards and shields, air sanitizers, or those types of things, maybe building a drive-through or buying some iPads so you can do contactless customer interactions. Those are projects that if you haven't maxed out your possible allotted grant, this is where you could go in and apply for those things. But keep in mind, if you do utilize that section, you will have to make those expenditures and turn in the receipts before you can be reimbursed. So you don't want to use that section unless you have to, and unless you really have something that relates to COVID, a project that you're really wanting to do. All right, save and continue. And then as you'll see, those first two sections there are checked off because they're complete. And now I'll turn it back over to Dr. Foster.
Okay, this is our general contact information. Thank you, Mr. Hill. That was very, very informative, and I'm sure our participants may need to kind of take a moment to take all of that in. But again, our ARPA team is here at the county to work with you. At the end of the workshop, we will again post our phone number as well as our email address. We welcome emails and calls for specific questions, and we will have questions after our workshop today as well. So this is kind of your legal name of your business. We ask you put that here. And we find that some businesses have a legal name in terms of how they're registered with the Secretary of State's office, but maybe functioning in terms of the name that customers know them as by a different name. So that's the intent here. If there's a different name you're going by in terms of the public interaction, you will put that in terms of DBA you're doing business as. We want to just make sure that this is really a valid operating business. So we ask you for your website or Facebook page address, giving us a sense that this is how you're attracting customers. This is your, if you will, your window to your customer base, your window to the community. So that's why we're asking for those, as well as a contact number in case we have some questions about your application. It might be easier for us to contact you by phone because we want to expedite your application as we go through it. Your mailing address, the preference is, and what we plan to do is actually, if you qualify for assistance, we'll actually mail you your check. So we want to make sure that you give us a full, valid, current mailing address. We had a lot of different experiences with the CARES program. CARES was something completely new to all of us. We did have a few cases where the mail was either delayed or people gave us actually the wrong address or made mistakes. And so it just created a delay in actually getting your assistance check. So we want to make sure that all of this information is correct so that we can mail your grant award to you. Same thing here, business operation address. If you have multiple locations, give us the predominant location where your business is conducted. Again, we just want to minimize confusion so we can work with you very concisely, as well as make sure any mailing or grant award check, et cetera, can get to you as efficiently as possible. So that's what you would fill out in these lines. Thank you, Skylar. Some of this is also just demographic type information, and we have some more as well, but this question in particular, services or goods provided, we've got a drop-down box, and so you give us kind of the category, because when we get through with our small business assistance program, we want to be able to also say to the U.S. Treasury, how is the breakdown in terms of education, arts, entertainment, accommodation, food services, what were the categories? And it also gives us, in terms of Greene County, a better picture of what elements, what industries in our community may have had some of the greater impact from the COVID-19 pandemic, at least in terms of those who have applied for the Small Business Assistance Grant. This again is informational. And of course, what year was your business established? That should be, secondary knowledge to you as a business owner. And then your FEIN number. If you're a sole proprietor, you would also put your social security number here. Again, you would save this section, and we'll go to the next section. This is demographic information. You'll notice in that box it says the following section is optional. So there's no penalty if you do not complete it. But we really want to use this for internal reporting, and the U.S. Treasury has a very strong equity component with the American Rescue Plan Act funding. So there's a strong desire to know, particularly in terms of underrepresented, underserved members of our community, if in fact they're accessing these different opportunities for economic assistance. So we're not trying to pry into your personal business. We're just interested in knowing the racial, ethnic makeup of the business owner, as well as the employee base. So that's why we ask questions. For example, is the business veteran owned? Does the, we're putting up our screen there for a minute, but just these particular questions that you'll see in those bars. Does the business owner have a disability? So we just want to just get a little bit different picture demographically of who might be involved with the business. And this, so again, we can understand better how the pandemic has impacted our local community. If you are participating, please mute your microphone just so that everybody can hear as we talk and try to explain clearly. So again, please mute your microphone. We appreciate that. So in the same vein, we're asking what percentage of your employees, and this is in terms of, racial and ethnic identity. And our thought is, because this is 50 or less employees, we hope this is not too much of a burden or too onerous to break this down, at least in terms of what you know. You may not know everybody's specific ethnic or racial makeup, but to the best of your ability. And we would appreciate if you would answer that. But again, it's optional. We'll ask again if you could please mute your microphones. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, so now we'll save this section and we'll go to our next section, which is the application overview. This should be pretty clear. The eligible uses under ARPA for which you're applying. This, of course, is straight out of the legislation to offset negative economic impacts. So the line underneath it says you're using your mitigating losses by utilizing funds to supplement business operations. So we asked you in the application, and Scott was going to put down a reason to basically describe how you will, this will help your business recover. And just as an FYI, we've had some questions already. These funds are not to open up a new location. They're not intended for business expansion. You are using these funds to mitigate your losses, the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the reasons should be in those kind of categories. And then the next opportunity is if you are responding to the public health emergency by using those funds, as Mr. Hill mentioned, to do some things to kind of make your business safer, more user-friendly in terms of how the public perceives accessing your business as a customer. And then you can describe what you would do with those funds. The final one is kind of an assurance statement. It's just making sure that you are aware that there are guidelines, eligibility uses, or restrictions in terms of the ARPA funds, and that you are familiarizing yourself with them and you will be in compliance with those requirements. Similarly, the next two questions on the business compliance. You complete all of those questions, I guess there's three of them. Exclusively for expenditures. And are you current on all your state sales tax remittances and Greene County property tax payments? This is not a deal killer, if you will, but if for some reason you're not current, because again, we recognize we're still coming out of a pandemic. If you're not current, we may need an explanation on why you're not current with your sales tax and Greene County property tax and what you may be doing to in fact become current. I'll give you the next step, Mr. Hill.
Okay, so as Dr. Foster was just saying, if you do click no on that on the question just above that, and he said that you would provide information, Skylar, go ahead and just click no, just so they can see the opportunity to add the information is right there. So you don't have to attach something later. Okay, so on the business license, if you have a license for your business, then click yes or no, or let us know if it's not required. These questions help us verify that you do indeed have a business, and will expedite your application if we can find your license and your registration with the Missouri Secretary of State. If we can find those things and find your business easily, it will be easier for us to then move your application on further on down to the payment stage rather than get held up in the verification stage. So again, we're not trying to, this isn't government just trying to get all your information. This is us just trying to make sure that the money gets out to real businesses in our community. And then the next question is the business suspended or debarred. Basically, declared ineligible in any way by any federal department or agency, because if you do not qualify for federal funds, you do not qualify for these funds, because this is just the federal funds that are passing through the county. So if you don't qualify for federal funds, we need to know that. And then also there's just other question there about defaulting on federal loans. If you owe money to the federal government, have defaulted on loans, obviously that disqualifies you as well. And we did have one question as far as student loans by business owners. That does not count on that particular question there, because we had that question come up a couple of times. All right, and then I guess I'll take this one as well, the supporting documentation. We've tried to make this easy where you can just click and upload a little bit of more information that will help us verify your business. If you told us that you had employees and the amount of your grant would be a little bit larger for those that have that are supporting employees, we do need to see a little bit of verification there. So we've suggested the 941 quarterly or your SUTA form, something that will show an employee count would be what we're wanting to see here. If you're not familiar with that term or that form, whatever forms you are, that when you file your to pay your employment taxes, that's what we would want to see there, that verifies your employees. And then if you're a sole proprietor and you report all of your business information on your Schedule C when you file your 1040, then in order to verify your business, that's what we're going to need to see in the second section. So you would do that if you're a sole proprietor. And then finally, the W-9. This is required by everyone, is to give us a W-9. What the W-9 gives us is the information we need to set you up as a vendor to actually cut you a check. So no W-9, no check. We just cannot cut you one without one. So if you do not have a W-9 or are not familiar with that form, it's a very simple form. It just gives us basically your name and address and things so that we can send you the check. If you do have
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is
this is not a test?
Nope.
This is an actual, okay. Well, Dr. Foster, I don't know what else to do but turn it over to you and let you make the decision on how to close this out, because apparently we got to leave the building.
Hopefully you all, unfortunately, it feels like we have some kind of emergency in the building we're located where we need to evacuate and come out of the offices. Probably the good news is I think we're at just about the end in terms of the additional attachments. So if you could go